latest, I would say, like the last one which has been detected. But these are the five basic tastes.
Japanese taste.
Yeah. This is it. So generally, like uh, preservative, it's used like a kind of a taste enhancer. Right, right. Yes, and monosodium glutamate or whatever.
That is the mommy taste.
Yes. So then the food gets dissolved in saliva, and these dissolved food with saliva that touches our taste receptors in our mouth. And taste receptors are actually located across whole of our mouth. Earlier there was a perception that our tongue has certain areas for different taste receptors. So certain portion is dedicated for sweet, certain portion is dedicated for salt or something like that. But that is no more kind of considered valid. So it is the latest understanding is that the taste receptors are spread across the whole of mouth. On binding the taste receptors, its electrical charge changes, and that electrical charge change is communicated to the brain via signals. And in early days, this taste receptor, these were very helpful in identifying what is kind of nutritious versus what is toxic. So,
Grading also takes place.
sorry,
Grading also takes place in a way.
grading.
Grading. When you say sweet, within that there is a grading. When there is salty, the grading also takes place.
Right.
The brain is able to discern not only sweet or another, within that grading also takes place.
Right.
So that part of grading is basically the process of brain working on. The first signal is sent by the tongue, then the brain, and when the signal goes with the deep, then they say no, it's very sweet. When it goes, it's less sweet.
So it could be less sweet or
processing. What I say that it is not only perception, but
right.
the grading also processing also takes place.
That's true for any kind of sense. So like how much amount of light is coming to our eyes, how much smell is coming to us. So how many senses are kind of getting excited by the amount of say like. So
एक ये आपने जो 6 और 9 का दिया था ना
जी
that was a very interesting phenomena from which point you see and the people keep on arguing on the other point and you turn the perception starts to change. So it's a very good example of the debate which often takes place. आप भी one person that भाई आप भी ठीक है हम भी ठीक है
right.
sort of
So basically, a lot of conflict can be avoided if you start looking from other person's perspective or view. So if you basically get into the shoes of other person, you can probably avoid a lot of debate. So that's what I think that that perception highlights. So we'll talk now about smells. So it's also known as olfaction.
एक हमारे
जी सर
एस्ट्रोफिजिक्स में नोट द रीच उसने एक कविता लिखी थी मेरा सही होने के लिए आपका गलत होना जरूरी नहीं है
राइट
ये ठीक है बहुत मेरा सही होने के लिए आपका गलत होना जरूरी नहीं है
राइट
and he wrote a very good point. He was a physicist.
It's exactly the same thing, sir.
And that for your six is an extension of that kind of thought process.
It's exactly same.
मेरा सही होना आपका नहीं गलत होना जरूरी नहीं.
Right. So the number of smell sensors, scent sensors in our nose, that's something which is not a kind of a every number. Some scientists used to believe that we had around we can kind of get about 10,000 of smells, but now the latest research says it could be up to 1 trillion. So the thing is that yes sir, I'll just complete this and then so we have just few hundred smell sensors, and the point is that with just few hundred millions with few hundred sensors, how we can get up to 1 trillion kind of smells, that is something which is still not known. Sorry sir, now
ये जब हम टेस्ट की बात कर रहे हैं तो हम 5 पे ही रुक जा रहे हैं,
जी,
है ना? 5 या 6 या 7 समथिंग,
राइट,
एक दोनों हाथ इंद्रियों से कम थे। तो जब हम सुनने की बात कर रहे हैं तो हम ट्रिलियंस की बातें कर रहे हैं।
राइट,
इसका मतलब है हमने बिल्कुल फिक्स कर रखा है कि ये वाली स्मेल तो ना एन नंबर वाली है, 15वें नंबर वाली स्मेल है। ऐसा कैसे पॉसिबल है?
so it depends upon how brain perceives that. ब्रेन अगर जो भी उन कॉम्बिनेशंस को कैसे वो सेंस कर रहा है, whether it can differentiate between those two or not. तो probably sweet and salt you can differentiate.
नहीं, वो तो अगर बहुत ज्यादा नमकीन हो गया तो क्या उसको एक अलग तरीके का टेस्ट करेंगे?
Not
नमकीन ही कहेंगे।
नमकीन ही कहेंगे।
तो वैसे ही स्मेल में भी हम कहते हैं वो कूड़े की स्मेल आ रही है।
So
तो वो कितने तरह का कूड़े की स्मेल है?
मुकेश, ये बहुत सिंपल चीज है। ये होता है कैटेगराइजेशन हम कैसे करते हैं। अब अगर तुम इस चीज से पूछोगे, ये किताब में पढ़ रही, रंग कितने होते हैं? वायलेट, इंडिगो, ब्लू, ग्रीन, येलो और रेड। तो यूनो कि ऐसा नहीं है, पूरा रेंज है। तो क्या हुआ है कि चीजों में रेंज को अप्रिशिएट किया है उन्होंने, कुछ में उसको ब्लॉक कर दिया, ये सब ला के आना। एंड आई शेयर विद यू, मुझे इसकी अवेयरनेस हुई जब मैं स्कूल में था और केमिस्ट्री में किताब में लिखा था कि केमिस्ट्री में पढ़ाते हैं कि एसिड जो है ड्यू विटनेस को रेट कर देता है। उस किताब में नेक्स्ट सेंटेंस था, बट व्हाट इज रेड? इट इज ब्राइट रेड, वीक रेड, दिस। तो इशू ये है कि इन्होंने स्मेल में तो ज्यादा वो दे रखा है। जैसे रंगों में है, अब कई लोग हैं वो मैजेंटा, ये सब रंग नहीं अप्रिशिएट करते हैं, मोटे मोटे रंग पता है। So this is a continuum. Every experience is a continuum. But because we are not interested in it or know enough about it, we don't talk about that. जैसे मैंने कहा वो टेस्ट में गुलामी जो भी है वो अभी वोकैबुलरी में आया है, उससे पहले नहीं आया। तो ऐसे ही जैसे इमोशन नॉर्स कहते हैं, it's all continuity of these things. Yes, it's a matter of what has happened. दूसरी जो चीज है वो इंटरेस्टिंग है कि ये olfaction, ये वो ये सब में कुछ दिनों पहले तक the model that they had was, तुम्हारे ध्यान होगा केमिस्ट्री में मॉडल होता था ड्रॉप्स और बॉन्ड्स को बुक करने। So all this thing was understood as lock and key model. इसका मॉलिक्यूल उसका इसका मॉलिक्यूल। अब क्या हो गया, they all realized कोई फिट नहीं होता, all quantum properties, all quantum tunneling happening, and therefore it's an even bigger continuum. तो जैसे जैसे इंस्ट्रूमेंटेशन डेवलप हो रहा है और ये है, people are able to see that, and that is why now olfaction, that we are not seen as quantum phenomena. आपको सबसे इंटरेस्टिंग लगेगा, अब परफ्यूमरी में वो फिजिसिस्ट को ढूंढ रहे हैं जो इंफ्रारेड स्पेक्ट्रम देख के बता सकेगा ये परफ्यूम ये परफ्यूम ये। उनमें भी तो लॉ करा है, तो लॉ में अभी तक सबसे बड़ी एविडेंस होती थी आई विटनेस एविडेंस। आज आई विटनेस एविडेंस कोई मानी नहीं है, डेटा ड्रिवन एविडेंस चाहिए। आपको क्या महसूस हुआ, आपको क्या महसूस हुआ, आपने कहा लंबा है, छोटा है, 5 फुट एक कदम दिखा। So this is very moving.
The brain is able to recall the smell also. It gets your rose smell is, you are seeing rose from distance. Sometimes smell is also coming.
Right.
The smell is registered, a particular smell which you have taken. It recalls.
yes, so basically once we encounter an object,
Seeing the object, it
Right.
starts recalling.
so basically when we kind of recognize an object, we kind of make a memory what kind of attributes it relates to. So its color, its shape, its smell. So all that is basically becoming part of that memory. And whenever we are going to kind of encounter those memories again, we are going to relate with that object.
There are also cases जो Oliver Sacks ने अपनी case studies में लिखे हुए हैं कि when people who would actually be listening to some notes and कोई taste उसको trigger होता है,
Right.
like kind of basically cross wiring in the brain
Right.
when you are not coming from the tongue or hearing or something.
That is called synesthesia. We'll talk about that. So I'll just quickly move forward. So olfactory receptors located are in the back of the nose are connected to the brain, and this is how it looks like. So your scent, smell, enters your nose and touches the sensory receptors over here. Other possibility is that it enters through your mouth. So it goes through your mouth, and within mouth there is a connection with your nose. So the sense of smell can come directly via nose, or it can come via your mouth. So these are two different types of olfactions. So the first one is called orthonasal olfaction, which is happening through your nasal, and other one is retronasal, basically which is coming from the back of the nose. So now let's talk about an experiment. So if we block your nose, the nose is blocked, and if I give you a piece of apple and if I give you a piece of pear, नाशपाती और apple को अगर मैं दूं, with your nose blocked, probably you will not be able to distinguish whether you are eating an apple or whether you are eating a pear. So this is a fact which you can probably try yourself. So this happens because of a different thing called taste versus flavor. आप सर जो कह रहे थे, मतलब that comes over here, that taste refers to the chemical process in which taste receptors respond to the molecules in the food. जो receptors ने जो molecules से जो react करके जो action generate किया, whether it is sweet, sour, salty or what, that is basically your taste. But the flavor is something much more broader. It's kind of abstract phenomena which combines taste, smell, texture, temperature, and much more things. So if you look at flavor, it basically comprises of taste plus aroma, and it has other components as well, which say sound, appearance, texture, aroma. So all that is basically included as part of your flavor. So food doesn't taste well when we have cold. When it is cold, probably we don't like food. तो जब तक वो गर्म नहीं होता तब तक हमको उतना टेस्ट नहीं आता. और if you have a blocked nose, अगर कई लोगों को जब जुकाम हो जाता है तब उसकी स्मेल नहीं आ पाती, एंड देन हम कहते हैं ना कि खाना मन नहीं कर रहा, खाने में टेस्ट नहीं आ रहा. It's basically because of this reason. Or we add gulab jal, saffron or elaichi in the food. Because of that, we find it much more tasty. उसका flavor ही different हो जाता है. So it gives you a different experience altogether. Wine tasting में पहले वो सब लोग पहले उसको smell करते हैं and then they put it on their tongue. Right. And this is also used commercially. Many bakeries, they take a vent out of their oven and put it into the front of the bakery. तो जो वहाँ पे आ रहे हैं guests, जो customers आ रहे हैं, they feel more kind of inclined to buy the food. So this is something which is very much used in your hospitality industry. They try to give you a good experience by creating all this ambience and that. So food का taste उसमें एक part है, but there are a lot of other things which together give you that experience and the flavor. So now we talk about the auditory part. So I'll play a sound and probably I'll ask you to recognize it. I'll play it again. So although you clearly hear something, but it might be difficult to make out what exactly it is. And this mystery sound is called sine wave speech, a very degraded sound of something speaking. So it is really some speech, but we are not able to hear it because we have kind of intentionally degraded it. So as brain has probably never heard a sound quite like that, it is unable to infer speech in it. Now listen to the actual sound. पहले मैं फिर से एक बार मिस्ट्री साउंड सुना देता हूँ आपको. Okay, now we listen to the actual sound.
The floor was quite slippery. The floor was quite slippery.
Okay, so now you have heard what it is. The floor was quite slippery. Now I'll play the sound once again.
Now you can hear it.
Now you can hear it,
Right here, right.
isn't it? So what has happened in this between between these 30 seconds, what has happened? The brain has got some experience of what
Actually.
to expect, what you are expecting, and that's what is leading you to kind of being able to recognize this. So this is how the brain learns. Brain is learning with experiences and what is basically happening around us.
I'll give an example. जिन लोगों ने गॉडफादर देखी है, पहली बार में मालूम पढ़ लो क्या बोलता है, नेक्स्ट टाइम जब आप हम पढ़ते जाते हैं, फिर से देखते हैं.
Right. So इसका एक और दूसरा aspect है. I'll just try to.
I'm Dina Bogasher, a neuroscientist at the McGovern Institute at MIT. I study perception, or how the brain uses the senses to understand the world around us. When your senses are activated, your brain is sent clues about what's out there in the world. Usually, your senses give you lots of clues, and your brain pieces these clues together to figure out the complete picture. But sometimes, the clues aren't so clear, and your brain has to make a guess about what's out there based on your brain's assumptions or expectations. So, if you change your expectations, you can actually change your perception. Here's what I mean. I'm going to play a sound, and I want you to listen for this word. You've probably heard brain. Now I'm going to play the exact same sound, but I want you to listen for these words. You've probably heard the words reading needle this time. That's because the audio quality of this clip isn't clear, and your brain made an assumption based on the clues it's given. You can visit our website.
So this basically the same sound with two previous expectations. You are hearing the same thing, two different interpreting it differently. So that is what happens. जो हमारे previous experiences हैं, उसमें कई बार ऐसी information जो अगर हमें unclear है, we make interpretation based on what we know, but it could be completely different. Now let's talk about visual senses. So this is how an object and the light enters our eyes, and as we know that we have a convex lens in our eye, which basically creates an inverted image of the object in our eye. But the brain actually perceives it in a correct, basically in the reverse way. So brain is just receiving the action potentials, a series of action potentials, but it is kind of interpreting it in a with a right angle. So this is what the perception of basically visual perception. Now I'll going to show you a text and I will ask you to read it. Everybody has read this? Okay. So what's the issue here? I think none of the words are probably correctly spelled over here. And actually, after this meme came, I think some of you might have seen it over the WhatsApp or kind of in different channels. But there's a disclaimer by the University of Cambridge that there is no such study done by them, and this kind of report was never published by them. So it is just a kind of a WhatsApp meme. But the interesting thing is, we all could read this and very fluently. was not kind of, maybe there was kind of a slightly less than our normal reading speed, but it was quite fluently we could read it. So why we are able to read it? The words are short. In this specific sequence of words, the words are short. The function words that provide grammatical structures are not messed up. जो छोटे छोटे उसमें grammatical to the इस तरह के words हैं उनको उसमें change नहीं किया गया. Letters beside each other are switched, making it not much more difficult for the readers to read it. So थोड़ा सा उसमें वो भी ध्यान रखा गया है कि उसको ऐसे पढ़ने में ज़्यादा problem ना हो. And when strengthening the order of the letters, the sound is preserved. जो उसका word का जो pronunciation है वो शायद इतना change नहीं होगा. The word choices are predictable. Choices जो words के इस तरह से किए गए हैं वो काफी predictable हैं. So this is a concept called typoglycemia. Okay, so just to kind of warn you, this is not a kind of a scientific name. ये I think again probably internet में नाम ले लिया है typoglycemia, but people call it by this name, and this is basically the ability to understand words when first and last letters are stable, but the middle letters are scrambled. And why it happens? This is called because of a transposed letter effect, and this is basically due to the concept of priming. So what happens is that if you get a stimulus, and that leads you to expect the response for the subsequent stimulus. For example, अगर किसी sentence में nurse आ रहा है और उसमें doctor already आ चुका था, तो then probably we will be able to read it faster. But अगर डॉक्टर की जगह वहाँ पे बेड होगा, बेड के बाद अगर नर्स आता तो probably हमें रीड करने में थोड़ा सा प्रॉब्लम आती, मतलब it will not be that fluent. So it's basically a sequence, basically the flow which gets created with which the brain is able to understand it. So transport letter non-word is able to activate the lexical representation of the base word. जो base word है उसकी जो उसी के letters को हमने change किया है. The transposing letters with base words versus transposing with the random letters. तो अगर जो उसके actual letters हैं उन्हीं को हम transpose करते हैं, then it can be easily recognized. But उनकी जगह अगर हम कुछ different words use कर रहे हैं, different letters use कर रहे हैं, then it will become slightly difficult to read it. So that's the kind of things which were found after study. So this also explains how we are able to skim when reading. Many times we don't read the whole word, we don't read the whole sentence. We'll just skim through, and that's how we are able to read fast. So there's another one called scintillating grid. Are you able to see this grid? So we see yellow dots here, and do we see some black dots also? There are some flashing dots. Isn't it? Everybody is able to see? Yeah. But actually, there are no black dots. There are no flashing here. It is all yellow. So we have just, so if there is any flashing black dot, if you just concentrate on that, just focus on that, you will find that there is no black dot. Then you will find that the black dot has moved to some other place. So this is basically how our visual perception works. So what happens is, this is called scintillating grid illusion. It is caused due to the way our visual system processes contrast and edge information. So this is specially created grid, इसमें थोड़ा सा contrast है, and then बीच में काफी bright spot हमने डाला हुआ है. So there is a concept called lateral inhibition, which is basically when a photoreceptor is activated. एक bright light के कारण, bright point के कारण जो एक photoreceptor activate हो रहा है, तो it basically inhibits the activity of its neighboring receptors. तो जो yellow के आसपास के जो boundary के जो receptors हैं, उनकी एक्टिविटी को वो थोड़ा सा टोन डाउन कर देता है. That's how we are able to create contrast in our eyes. And that's what is something which is being used in this particular illusion. There's also illusion called after image illusion. So I'd like you to focus on this particular image, and यहाँ पे इसमें ये white spot है. So I'd like you to focus on this particular white spot for 30 seconds. And now I have changed it. So did you find some colors when I changed this? So maybe I think because of distance, we are not able to see it that clearly. But what happens is that when we change, this is called after image. So what happens is that when we change from this after image to this main image, so we initially for some time, for just a fraction of a second, we see that there are colors, natural colors on this, and then it becomes a black and white picture. So why does this happen? So after images are basically occur because of the sensory adaptation. Our eyes use red, blue and green light. जो हमारे हम different colors जो perceive करते हैं, that is basically because of three types of receptors which we have in our eyes. So what happens is that we receive light through these lens which falls on the retina, and here we have different types of receptors. So there are two types of photoreceptors. One is basically cylindrical receptor, which is basically taking the amount of light which is going into our brain, and then we have these cone receptors. There's a concept of cone receptors which basically detect color, and there are basically three types of cone receptors, which is one is red, green and blue. Because of these three types of receptors, we perceive different colors. So what happens in this after image illusion, that the color sensitive cone photoreceptors are exposed to constant stimulus. तो एक कलर को मैं अगर continuously expose करता हूँ, then that particular receptor becomes kind of lower energy. तो वो उस sense the brain ने अपने receptors को इस तरह से I think प्रोग्राम किया हुआ है कि अगर वो continuously उसको हम excite करेंगे, then brain asks him to stop it. Because अगर continuously कोई चीज excite हो रही है, तो brain is finding it difficult to cope with that. So what happens is that brain, अगर आपके for example there was a yellow which is basically combination of red and green, and yellow light is continuously seen, then the brain asks our red and green receptors to tone down. And similarly, अगर turquoise which is basically blue and green, अगर ये हमारे continuously eye पे पड़ती है, then brain asks us to basically tone down our green and blue cones to tone down. So when these are toned down and immediately अगर हम उसको white दोबारा से दिखाते हैं, then to come down from to come up from that toned down state to the higher state, there is a period when only the other one which is not toned down that gets sensitized. So अगर मैं येलो था और येलो को मैंने टोन डाउन किया, तो मींस मैंने रेड एंड ग्रीन को टोन डाउन कर दिया, तो इमीडिएटली आफ्टर दैट अगर मैं व्हाइट लाइट दिखाऊंगा तो सिर्फ ये वाले दोनों जो है मेरे वो रिसीव नहीं होंगे ब्रेन में, इट विल रिसीव ओनली द ब्लू वंस. तो जो पहले येलो था वो अब ब्लू मेरे को दिखने लगेगा. सिमिलरली अगर कोई चीज टर्कोइज थी, टर्कोइज मींस ग्रीन एंड ब्लू, एंड टर्कोइज मैं कंटिन्यूअसली देखता रहा तो ब्लू एंड ग्रीन मेरा टोन डाउन हो गया. सो इफेक्टिवली व्हेन द व्हाइट लाइट इज restored, I'll see the same thing as red. So that's basically because of sensory adaptation. So sensory adaptation leads us to basically handle situations where one particular sense is continuously getting excited.
एक अगर बचपन में हमें सिखाया जाता है कि तीन तरह के कलर हैं, दैट इज रेड, येलो एंड ग्रीन।
जी।
और आजकल जो कंप्यूटर में भी बात देखते हैं तो वो रेड, येलो एंड ब्लू हो गया है।
यस।
तो वो क्या कारण है, ये डिफरेंस चेंज क्यों आई?
सर ये अलग अलग पर्सपेक्टिव से है बेसिकली। जो आप कंप्यूटर का बता रहे हैं वो इलेक्ट्रॉनिकली है। एंड
जो बचपन में तो यही करते थे, तीन बेसिक।
राइट है। देन जो हम बचपन में करते थे वो केमिकल्स के बेसिस पे है। एंड जो हमारे सिस्टम में है दैट इज बेसिकली दिस वन।
सिस्टम में ये कलर,
सिस्टम में ये कलर है। तो
फिर
सिस्टम में
मुझे अगर
बेसिकली
यूज करता रहा कि हम जब ड्राइंग करते थे तो दो मिक्स करते थे।
दैट इज बेसिकली बिकॉज ऑफ केमिकल्स।
ऐसा क्यों है कि विमेन वुड डोंट थाउजेंड्स ऑफ कलर्स आज के सारी देखेंगे।
वो बेसिकली कंप्लीट स्पेक्ट्रम है आपका। सो
थैंक्स फॉर
वो मैन और वुमेन के ब्रेन अभी इन्होंने डिसेक्ट नहीं किया।
मतलब के अलग ही लेवल हो गया।
सो अगेन मतलब अगर हम एक विब्योर जो कलर होता है, जो आपका रेनबो के कलर्स होते हैं, इट गोज इन ए पर्टिकुलर सीक्वेंस। ओके, तो उस सीक्वेंस में आपको ये सारे कलर्स दिखेंगे, राइट? बट यू विल नॉट फाइंड ब्राउन इन दैट। ब्राउन आपको उसमें नहीं दिखेगा, जस्ट बिकॉज ब्राउन इज बेसिकली मेड आउट ऑफ रेड एंड ग्रीन, एंड दैट इज नॉट फाउंड एडजेसेंट इन द रेनबो स्पेक्ट्रम। रेनबो को अगर आप देखेंगे तो रेड एंड ग्रीन के बीच में डिस्टेंस होगा, मतलब देयर आर अदर कलर्स। सो जो नेचुरल रेनबो में दिखते हैं वो बेसिकली जो एक वेवलेंथ से लेकर दूसरी वेवलेंथ तक जाते हैं, राइट? So some colors are which we are able to see because of mixture later on, जो रेनबो में नहीं दिखते हैं, but those are still visible to us.
Like that brown color very beautifully. All those paintings of very sad nature.
Right. So this is something similar over here. यहाँ पे मैं 3 balls ली हैं, एक में cold है water, एक में lukewarm है, एक में hot है। तो if I put my hand in cold and hot water, and after few seconds, if I put my hand in the lukewarm water, what will happen is that this particular hand which was in the cold, that will feel warm, and this particular hand which was basically in the hot water, that will feel cold. So why does this happen? Again, this is because of sensory adaptation. So what happens is the brain has kind of stopped. So इस हैंड के जो सेंसर्स थे उनको उसमें उसने कहा कि कोल्ड बहुत हो गया, मत बताओ मुझे। So it basically asks the cold receptors to tone down, and on this particular hand it tells the hot receptors to tone down. So when you put your hands into the lukewarm water, the other receptors continue to respond. Is it clear? So, sorry?
The sense, the feeling is registered.
Right.
That continues till the time that it goes on.
Right.
It has a timer in this also. Suppose you put it for another 5-10 seconds or so, you'll find the real thing coming.
Right.
But the timer is out.
So it's basically that moment, like
So,
for few seconds, you will feel that.
Feeling which is registered in our brain has some timer.
Right.
And therefore you find that this change comes.
Right. Because the moment that condition is reverted, then basically the sense will start getting activated again. But उस activation में थोड़ा सा time लगता है. During that period, you will feel it is kind of cold or hot. So basically, your senses are tuned to detect changes, not absolute measurements. This is something most critical. कि हम changes को recognize करने के लिए हम senses हमारे में. They are not telling you the exact absolute level कि अभी ये इतना 20 डिग्री है, ये 30 डिग्री है, or something like that.
I've also read somewhere that we don't have receptors to detect moisture.
Moisture.
Yeah, we can't detect water.
So there are humidity monitors.
The only way we detect moisture is because there is a temperature variation. Otherwise, we don't have a sensor.
Okay, so probably I'm not aware of that. I will probably search that and then I will
And
come
that's
back.
okay, I'm sharing it.
Okay.
Very interesting fact from you.
Okay. Thanks for sharing that. So there's some more scenarios. Just like jumping into the cold swimming pool doesn't feel cold after a while, or you are unable to recognize the smell of your clothes, but others can. You don't realize constant downward push on your body from the gravity until you jump and fall. And living next to the train tracks, you just no longer hear trains passing by. But if your visitor is there, then they will feel very much annoyed. So basically, these are things which are encountered by us whole day. I think every time during the day we keep on encountering these scenarios. But there's a lot of kind of internal thing happening by our brain, which is making this happen. So this, as we discussed, like it's a diminished sensitivity of sensors as a consequence of constant stimulation. Every sensory system in our body does sensory adaptation, and it makes them less sensitive to a constant stimulation. This helps in focusing brain on changes in the environment while ignoring the repetitive information. So repetition से कोई मतलब नहीं है उसका. Without sensory adaptation, the brain would be absolutely overwhelmed. अगर कंटिन्यूसली सब कुछ आता रहेगा, then brain के लिए इतनी सारी information होगी, it will not be able to process. And that's why this is something which helps in brain survival.
जैसे पुराने जमाने में अब तो खैर नहीं है,
जी।
स्टीम लोकोमोटिव होते थे, स्टीम लोकोमोटिव,
Right.
जो ड्राइवर है कॉन्स्टेंटली भट्टी में कोयला डालता रहता है, इतनी गर्मी में हम जाएंगे तो परेशान हो जाएंगे,
Right.
बट
They will.
वो बड़ा मजे में काम करता रहता,
Because they have become adapted to that.
वही चीज होगी।
Right. So I have visited as part of my training. I was part of Tata. I had visited Tata's facility, and वहाँ पे भी either like they were just putting a lot of kind of, and I was just wondering कि मतलब how they are, मतलब हमारे लिए तो वहाँ पे उसके पास भी जाना बड़ा मुश्किल है, and they are doing
वो सेल्फ जो सैचुरेट हो गया,
हलवाई जलेबी तल रहा है और तेल में अपना हाथ डाल रहा है।
Right. So basically,
गर्मा गर्म तो किला तो रेडी टू उठा देती हम नहीं डाला।
right.
सब लोग कह रहे हैं, ये भूल जा रहे हैं कि दिल्ली की जो हवा इतनी पॉइजनस है, उसमें हम सब लोग रह रहे हैं। सारा डेटा कहता है मोस्ट पॉइजनस इज दैट
We are still able to survive.
फॉर मंथ्स।
होमो सेपियंस से म्यूटेट हो चुके हैं।
गौशाला में किसे पता लगता है लोगों को? किसी को नहीं पता लगता, नेचुरल है, तो हम तो गौशाला में ही।
So let's move to the another concept. That's basically crosstalk between the senses. So many times we encounter the phrases like this deal seems too good to be true. It's beginning to smell like a rat. The experience left. Sorry, that's a typo here. It's a rat actually, not rat.
सेंसेक्स के लिए तो वो सही है।
So that experience left a bad taste in my mouth. So these are everyday expressions. So what is happening is that we are relating the sensory input of one type with the another one, and similarly, as we discussed that a holiday meal, sight, sound, smell, flavor.
क्रॉस टॉक से मैं एक चीज पूछना चाहता हूँ, हम लोग का एवरीडे बिहेवियर होता है, अगर हमको बहुत ही फाउल स्मेल आती है तो हम स्पिट आउट करते हैं,
Right.
तो वो दो सेंसेस एक जो हमारे olfactory या
That's basically the reaction.
saliva में मिक्स होता है कहीं जाकर, must be, that's why we spit it out.
Yes. So basically, उस मतलब जो bad smell है, that will basically result into bad experience. And अगर आपने उस समय कुछ खाया हुआ है, probably that will lead to this kind of vomiting or something. But अगर आपने कुछ खाया ही नहीं हुआ, तो probably vomiting नहीं होगी.
We spit it out क्योंकि उसमें जो उसकी स्मेल के पार्टिकल्स हैं वो हमारे
Saliva
saliva में
में,
होते हैं,
right.
और अगर spit out करते हैं।
आई आई ड्रॉप डालते हैं, डोज ड्रॉप डालते हैं, और आप के टेस्ट द बिटरनेस।
वो actually because connected होता है ना, nose and mouth are connected, so that goes. So let's hear another
story on this what Buddha said. So I am a vegetarian. तो किसी ग्रुप में फिर मैं जाता हूँ, फ्रेंड कोई जा रहा है मिलने में गए, कुछ लोगों ने कुछ पास किया खाने की चीज, हमें अच्छी लगी, मैं मुंह में डाली, खा भी रहे थे, क्योंकि तुम तो वेजिटेरियन हो, ये तो कबाब है, and I spit it out. Very interesting थी, उसकी कोई चीज just psychological thing, the brain. And उसके बाद मैंने कई बार consciously non-veg खाया, ये कि क्या stupidity है, किसी ने किसी को non-veg है तो I spit it out, so let me understand what is veg, what is non-veg, etc. तो ब्रेन में बहुत सारे रिफ्लेक्स एक्शन होते हैं, एंड द मोमेंट ये हम हो गया गुस्से में, उसमें कोई कहे ये खाना झूठा था, फिर दो दोस्तों.
So basically a lot of previous experiences, my beliefs, my thoughts, that all lead to my actions. So here is another interesting one. I like to kind of show this small video.
At any one moment, we are being bombarded by sensory information. Our brains do a remarkable job of making sense of it. It seems easy enough to separate the sounds we hear from the sights we see. But there is one illusion that reveals this isn't always the case.
Ba, ba, ba.
Have a look at this. What do you hear?
Ba, ba, ba. Ba, ba, ba.
But look what happens when we change the picture.
Ba, ba, ba. Ba, ba, ba. Ba.
And yet, the sound hasn't changed. In every clip, you are only ever hearing ba with a B.
Ba, ba.
It's an illusion known as the McGurk effect.
Ba,
Take another look.
ba.
Concentrate first on the right of the screen.
Ba,
Now to the left of the screen.
ba.
The illusion occurs because what you are seeing clashes with what you are hearing.
In the illusion, what we see overrides what we hear. So the mouth movements we see as we look at a face can actually influence what we believe we're hearing. If we close our eyes, we actually hear the sound as it is. If we open our eyes, we actually see how the mouth movements can influence what we're hearing. Ba, ba, ba.
It's a bizarre effect. Remember, the only sound you're hearing is ba with a B.
Ba, 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 ba.
What's remarkable about this illusion is even knowing how it's done doesn't seem to make a difference.
Ba. The effect works no matter how much you know about the effect. I've been studying the McGurk effect for 25 years now, and I've been to face in the stimuli. I've seen stimuli thousands of times, but the effect still works on me.
So here you can see that how the inputs from one sense, basically our vision is impacting what we are hearing. So here we are hearing something, but we are actually interpreting it as something completely different.
लेकिन जब बहुत सारे लोग बोल रहे होते हैं तो उसमें से जिसका चेहरा हम देख रहे होते हैं उसकी बात हमको ज्यादा समझ में आती है,
राइट,
क्योंकि हम
उसके लिप्स मूवमेंट को हम देख पाते हैं.
या अगर के चैनल पे 8-9 रावण की तरह बैठा रहता है और आप सिर्फ उसको सुनिए
तब समझ में आता है.
जिसको आप देख रहे हैं ना उसकी बात आपको सुनाई देगी.
राइट.
इसीलिए घर पे डायरेक्ट टेबल पे आप टीवी पर देखते हैं
भूपेश ने कहा है जो that's not exactly true. We say पुराने जमाने में ये जो रेलवे वाले होते थे लोग एक ही टेलीफोन पर 20 लोग बात करते थे फ्रॉम रेडियो स्टेशन. सब बात कर रहे हैं, सिग्नल है, लेकिन आप वही सुनते हैं उसमें जो आपके काम का है.
राइट.
आप 10 लोग बात कर रहे हैं कि गाड़ी आ रही है, जा रही है, सिग्नल दो वगैरह वगैरह, the number of people talking on the same phone line,
Right.
एक ही होती थी पहले। तो उसमें जो है दो लोग जो जिसको काम की बात है वो वही सुनते हैं।
Right. So, sir,
I do not know what was that phenomenon.
So communication link, there is a concept of CDMA, code division multiple access, versus I think there are some other various TDMA and RDMA. So CDMA is basically focusing on what specific code you are interested in. So उस particular code का जो transmission होगा वो आप सुनोगे, बाकी transmission को आप
नहीं कोई अपने बच्चे को कैसे पहचानता है कि बड़ी कॉलोनी में वॉइस से उसकी पहचानता है।
Right.
There is a book says that seeing from ears and listening from voice.
Right.
And that seeing from ears is basically that when you hear a particular word, the images flows in your mind from the resistance.
Right.
Seeing from the ear and listening from the eyes. When you see a certain thing, you start saying that immediately. That's kind of relationship.
So basically, what we are saying is that the brain is able to. Brain is
Treatise on this, that how mind sees when you are hearing, you also see, and when you are seeing, you are also hearing.
Right. So basically, brain creates kind of cross connection between different senses, and that's what we observe. So this concept is sensory crosstalk. We heard about Madwell effect. Lip matching means combined video. I think a lot of memes are there where किसी का वीडियो लेके किसी की वॉइस ऐड कर देते हैं, and then we feel कि same person is speaking. We are able to converse, understand what someone is saying in a noisy room, looking at mouth movement. So जो भूपेश सर ने अभी कहा, so waitress taking order in a noisy bar, that's basically again looking at the lips movement. Color and mood, basically we say that red and oranges are warm and stimulating, blues and greens are cool and calming. Taste, smell and emotional, if we taste something which we have something bitter in our mouth, bad taste in our mouth, then we have a negative, stronger negative emotions. Our emotions are also impacted because of the taste which we have. Similarly, sweet drink leads to kinder judgments. So all this is basically brain playing its role. Ventriloquist, ये I think हम सबने I think देखा होगा. They are showing this and they are playing this puppet and then creating their sound. But we believe that this sound is coming from this puppet. And movie hall में अगर हम जैसे जाते हैं, so when picture is playing, then we think that the voice is coming from the mouth of that person, but actually it is coming from different speakers. So that's basically all how we are able to correlate between different senses. So synesthesia, I think what you were mentioning, that sensory crossovers such as tasting colors or feeling sounds, it's a kind of a crossed virus in brain. It's not a disease or a medical condition. It is basically something, a trait like a blue eyes. So some people have blue eyes, so it is some trait just like that. So it is something related to anesthesia, which says no sensation. Synesthesia means joint sensation. Basically, one sense is leading to another experience. So it is leading to two experiences. So brain routes sensory signal to two different areas, and its dual effect. Okay, there's another one, interesting one, and slightly probably will kind of
Words alone carry a lot of weight, but when the power of words is combined with the power of authority, you can get people to believe just about anything.
Dr. Willman, I have an honorary degree in pseudoepistemology from the University of Phoenix.
I placed an ad online inviting participants to take part in an experiment.
A trial experiment?
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to make these people believe that this fake rubber prop is actually their real arm.
Seems unlikely.
This is a Fibonacci silk. Let me show you how it works. If I drape it like this, the gap is now gone between your shoulder and the rubber arm, and your brain kind of fills in the gap. It's called the Seinfeldian effect. Simultaneously, because you cannot see your real left arm, your brain disassociates that. That's called the Costanza effect. Wiggle the fingers on your right hand. Great. And now wiggle the fingers on your left hand. I'm going to attempt to establish a connection right now using these. I'm just going to rub the feather along the fake arm and your real arm that you cannot see. Your brain starts to connect fake arm sensations and make them real. Now let's see how strong this connection is. Do you feel this?
Yes.
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 And that?
Yes.
And then.
That's cool.
Isn't that wild?
That's fair, because your hand is,
Yeah.
that's
Your
weird.
brain
Yeah,
connects them.
that's interesting.
Let's just test how far that connection goes.
Okay.
The cold test. Now on your right hand, do you feel that?
I do.
Cold.
Yes.
That's why I call it the cold test.
Genius.
When I place it over here, how does that feel? Keep in mind, there's no science happening here. Just the power of magic and the power of BS. Now, what do you feel?
Nothing.
You don't feel an ice cube resting on top of your hand?
No.
Let's try another experiment. I call this one the heat test. Be very gentle. I promise not to burn you.
Okay.
Just curious if you feel that. What do you feel?
A little bit heat.
Tell me how this feels.
Ah!
Now, do you feel that?
No.
This?
No.
That?
Nope.
The pain test. For the pain test, I'm going to use this pointy needle. I'm curious. Do you feel that?
Yeah.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
What does this feel like?
Yeah, I can feel it.
Is it okay if I prick your real hand?
Yeah.
No blood, like acupuncture. Do you feel that?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Let's try something else. The hammer test.
Oh! Oh!
You're good.
Oh!
Don't worry.
Wow!
Look at your fingers. Your hand's okay, right?
Okay, so what you just saw is that how our brain kind of starts rejecting one of our hands, and then it starts kind of thinking that a fake hand is my real hand. So this is basically called body transfer illusion. This leads to kind of a illusion of owning a external body part as your own, and this is something very useful in those cases where you kind of replace it with an artificial limb, prosthetic. So that is basically so. So multi-sensory integration. That means you saw like everything which is happening to the artificial hand that is being considered as happening to me, but happening to the real hand. So practically the brain has stopped considering my real hand as my own. That's the kind of impact which it has.
Oliver Sacks के दरअसल ये भी था कि आपका वन लेग एक पैर एक्यूट हो गया और राइट लेग है ही आपका और राइट लेग में पर आपको दर्द बहुत हो रहा है और तो वो डॉक्टर क्योर कैसे करेंगे वो तो है ही नहीं.
Right. So that's basically called phantom hand or phantom foot issue.
तो ये रामचंद्रन का बहुत काम है, इस पे किताब भी है कोई.
So is that the way there is sympathy and empathy?
Sympathy and empathy is completely different. We can have a separate discussion about that. But sympathy and empathy are completely different.
हिस्टीरिया कैसे हो जाता है? जैसे कभी बहुत पहले पेपर में आया था स्कूल में बच्ची को कुछ हुआ सबको ही मिला Actually, physically,
So that is called mirror neurons.
Mirror neurons.
So our neurons have the ability to mimic the neurons, the emotional state of the person in front of us.
So why this is not that neuron?
No. I mean, आपने सुना होगा ना किसी आप अगर sad person के साथ बहुत time spend करते हो तो आपको sadness आ जाती है. So and अगर खुश होंगे आसपास रहते हो तो आप में खुशी आती रहती है. तो इसी वजह से होता है. We have actually biological. We have no control over this. The kind of people, the kind of emotions we surround ourselves, our neurons mimic that automatically.
And in fact, I think neurons are supposed to be the reason why we are different from animals. That we, as humans, we evolved the way in which we did हमारा जो development हुआ because of mirror neurons. अगर कोई और सीख रहा है या किसी और को danger हुआ then we learn from the mirror neurons. So इसके कारण we branched out in a different development path.
So what we are seeing is probably not the same concept as the other neurons that you are seeing, because here what we are seeing is that brain को ये दिख रहा है कि movement और जहाँ से sensations आ रहे हैं. So this is यहाँ पे movement हो रहा है और मेरे को sensations भी आ रहे हैं. Then I start considering that part as like a real. That's basically leading to this kind of illusion. And as you rightly said, this is basically used in treating the phantom limb pain experiences.
Synesthesia का भी use किया है शायद. It is rewiring करके brain को.
Right. So that is basically kind of giving you some kind of relief. But here is
Synesthesia in the sense that आपका कोई sensation है वो काम नहीं कर रहा. Right, because there is some issue with the brain wiring आपका जहाँ end होना चाहिए वहाँ नहीं हो रहा. So then they actually rewire the neurons to a different part of the brain, and that part of the brain takes up the function of and starts giving you the feedback from the system.
Okay.
So I have a question about so in that video you showed, this person started perceiving this fake hand as their own, right? But it's also that our body has pain receptors all over our body. So if the brain itself is the only thing that's responsible for feeling pain, then what are these receptors for then?
So basically these receptors are like जैसे आप कहते हो ना ये मेरा माउस है, माउस से आपका सिग्नल जा रहा है कंप्यूटर पे, बट कंप्यूटर उसको एक्सेप्ट ही नहीं कर रहा, तो क्या होगा? वो सिग्नल तो जा रहा है, माउस आप हिला रहे हो, उससे सिग्नल जा रहा है, बट कंप्यूटर हैज स्टॉप्ड रिकॉग्नाइजिंग दैट पर्टिकुलर डिवाइस, देन इट विल काइंड ऑफ नॉट रिस्पॉन्ड टू दैट. So let's quickly talk about sixth sense. Do we have a sixth sense? Is there really a sixth sense? So let's try an exercise, short exercise. Close your eyes and next touch your nose using the index finger of your right hand with eyes still closed. So I think all of us are able to do it, and isn't it very simple and laughably simple? Yet, if you think about it, quite a lot went into making it happen. It doesn't happen that simply. We have to be aware of where our nose was in the space, know where your index finger was in relation to your nose, and know exactly how and in what direction to move your finger in order to get it to its destination. And what's more, you have to do all of this without being able to see it. बिना देखे हुए हमको ये काम करना था, but we are still able to do it. So it's basically possible due to two important senses. One is called proprioception. That's basically which tells you where your finger is and where your nose is in the space. And the other sense is kinesthesia, which tells you how to move your finger and take it to your nose. So these two senses together enabled us to do this exercise. So, say proprioception is sense of position.
The sixth sense which you are saying that you are trying to obtain through the physical thing, or it just happens.
So I just put that title. So it's
the
the sixth sense.
Some of the people are able to just get it a certain way. And you find that other person is also that, yes, that's true. He said he's coming.
Yes,
and
sir.
that which is that kind of receptor which takes place. That's why many people say that they are the sixth sense. And dog is the sixth. There is sixth sense. Then what's going to happen?
Yes,
It doesn't happen.
So probably
that's a kind of, is it a kind of brain receptor other than physically you see it?
So, I think you're talking about some people get some kind of a feeling that this is about to happen, and that's what we roughly talk about the sixth sense. So, यहाँ पे
That's right. In animal cells also they say
right.
that this thing is a.
So I'm not talking about that sense, and that is
reported story, studies of this.
Right.
That they get cells much earlier than because of their ability to sense certain things.
Yes, sir. So
that analysis has been done, or it's still is a kind of a dark area.
So it is still a dark area. It's not accepted as a science. It is still not accepted as a science, kind of a science. So it is still called neuroscience. So what I am talking about, मैंने sixth sense probably गलत title डाल दिया हो. It was just to evoke your interest, but it is not that sixth sense which we generally talk about. So I am just trying to tell you that we are aware of five
senses and the five.
Yes. So I'm just trying to tell you that there are more senses than five senses.
We have been able to understand.
जो हमको पांच ज्ञान इंद्रियां बताई गई हैं, जो हमको पांच ज्ञान इंद्रियां बताई गई हैं, they are more than that. So I'm just trying to, and probably we'll talk about more also. So the proprioception, it diminishes with alcohol consumption. जो ये इसका sense is the kids and teens tend to have lower proprioceptive abilities since their bodies are growing and it takes time to brain to adapt to changing shape and then kids just like act as the drunk adults. So kids में अभी ये proprioception है वो उतना अभी develop नहीं होता. That's the reason they are not able to move very fast. And there is another sense called sense of balance, which relies on sensory systems like vision, vestibular, and proprioception. Standing on one foot with eyes closed. This is one of the most difficult exercises. हम एक पाँव पे खड़े हो सकते हैं, मतलब I think we can stand for a long time on one of our foot. But अगर हम आँख बंद करके करना चाहें, it will be really very very difficult to do it more than 3 or 4 seconds. And if you try it, do it with something near you, otherwise you may fall. So I think जो हमारे शास्त्रों में या मतलब जो मैथोलॉजी में है, please don't try it.
अभी करो तो साथ में गुंदा रख लो.
It is also an indicator of body. I think fitness industry में body is to determine the degree and
Yes. So I think जो हमारे मैथोलॉजी में है कि किसी ने तपस्या की, एक पैर पे खड़े होकर ध्यान लगाया, and if they are really able to do it that long, that shows the kind of mental capacity, the mental power they had.
एक ही पैर उसके लिए आता है.
महाबलीपुरम में बहुत फेमस स्टैचू है वो, भागीरथ का.
Right. एक पाँव पे खड़े हैं.
पीछे एक बंदर खड़ा है जो उसकी मिमिक्री कर रहा है.
अच्छा.
ऊपर से गंगा उतर बोल रहा है. That is भागीरथ.
जी.
Doing penance. और वो गंगा उतर रही है और पीछे बंदर उसकी नकल कर रहा है. So they had humor.
So getting motion sickness while in a car, जब हम कार में जा रहे होते हैं, so I think body says that we are kind of stand still, but our eyes are saying that we are moving. So there is a kind of mismatch, and this is not probably being kind of adaptively taken by some of the, especially kids, and they kind of feel bad about that. So sense of balance basically happens because of something in your ear. हमारे कान जो हैं वो सिर्फ सुनने के लिए नहीं होते. There is also something called vestibular sense, which is basically in our ears, and that is what is basically helping us keeping our balance. And if we get some kind of ear infection, this may lead to a situation where we are not able to balance ourselves properly. So
सोते हुए दिखते नहीं है. या ट्रेन में बस से
नीचे नहीं So a person will be unable to walk. Well, अगर इस ear infected person है, not be able to move quickly with his eyes closed. And as she was mentioning, that standing on one leg shows a good sign of health. If we practice it, it helps us in improving our overall health. So there, apart from these senses, there are some other senses as well: thermoception, pressure, pain, acceleration. These are all internal senses, like hunger. Hunger is also another sense. So what I'm just trying to highlight is that we are not having just five senses; there are more senses. But maybe we can say that we have five external senses. We are getting external inputs through these five senses, but there are a lot of more internal senses which help brain to control our body. And then when we find animals, they have some super senses like echolocation. Echolocation is a technique used by birds and dolphins to find out their different destinations. So they kind of produce more noise, and that comes back, and based upon that reflected noise, they are able to sense. Then infrared and ultraviolet vision. However, we are not able to see this part of the spectrum, but there are some snakes and other vipers which are able to see things in the ultraviolet level. So at night, when they are not able to see normally, they use this sense to sense. Basically, because of heat, they are able to see these animals or their prey. And similarly, eagles seem to have capability to see ultraviolet vision. So some have electrical sense as well. So they create omnipresent electric fields, and these fishes, they create this electric field. And if there is something which is blocking their electric field, they can sense that there is something over there. And some animals have magnetic sense, which help them to move from location to location. So I think we talk about migratory birds, how they are able to move from one place to another place. So they are basically using their magnetic sense. So it is, there is still not very clear established reason for that, but there are small deposits of magnetite in the nervous system, or there is some protein which basically helps in this. So I'll just quickly close here this by. So we humans, can we get more senses than what we have? So what is being found is that brain is extremely adept at learning new types of signals and making an interpretation from those based upon inputs from other senses. So how echolocation is found to be kind of possible within humans. There are people who have been able to train themselves on echolocation. So blind people can sometimes use this if they are properly trained. And there are certain wearable devices which are being developed, like this one. This one receives sound and it kind of converts into some kind of vibrations, which if you are wearing, that vibrations will travel to your brain, and by using those vibrations, brain is able to kind of make sense of what is the sound over there. So these are some devices which are being developed. There are a lot of many such devices which are getting developed to help people who don't have their normal senses working. So that's something which is already happening. I will stop here.
Hi everyone. Before we have this discussion, before I go ahead with my paper, I'm not going to discuss the entirety of it. I already know we're short on time. I just want to begin with a simple question to all of you. What do you think are the wildest possibilities of what can happen if neuroscience actually advances to a point where we can actually alter our brains? Just any wild guesses, anything. Telepathy. Actually, yeah, that's a pretty good one actually.
So just get married and your brain will be altered. Yes.
No.
Altered for better.
Yes.
There is the attitude. No, but who's for it?
Who's better? Yeah.
Better now? Yeah. No, better to relative is.
Also, another simple question I would like to pose is that do you think if we get the opportunity to alter brains, to alter our perception of reality, do you think it's fair right now to give certain people an advantage when it comes to brain functioning? Because obviously, if we are able to alter our brains right now, it's pretty obvious that the rich are the only people that are going to be able to afford it. The poor people can't afford it. So, do you think it's right to give people an intellectual advantage to the people who already have that? So that's a question.
There's already a lot of people who are so-called neurolearners or autistic children. They are actually having superpowers in some area.
Exactly,
And
but
they have a superior brain, those particular skills.
Yeah, but
they are born.
anyone can have that, right? Throughout the human population, anyone can have that. But with this, what's going to happen is that only the rich people are going to end up having even more intellectually capable children.
It's like the Ambanis can live up to 150 and we die at 50.
Yeah, but like even Ambani's kids are going to be like smarter than any of us.
AI can augment the deficiencies that they have in the normal population based on the baseline that we will create. And I'm actually experimenting with it, and I know that it actually gives real results. I have a success case in less than 3 months, where I've been able to alter the behavioral pattern of a person who is autistic after getting the AI to really suggest some changes in his case. So, ethical use of this technology is difficult to manage.
So this is from here. Yes, ma'am.
I'm saying ethical use will be difficult.
Yeah, ethical. I have this subsection section on ethical use of that as well. So I'll just begin.
To answer your question, it's going to happen. Learning to get ahead, but it's not ethical.
Yeah, it's not ethical at all. So the topic of my paper is actually just it's about neuroscience. It's cognitive neuroscience and computation brain imaging. So I wanted to mix something that has something to do with artificial intelligence, machine learning, and cognitive neuroscience. And this is what the paper is actually trying to accomplish here. I want to explore the synergies between neuroscience and computational brain imaging so that we can unravel the mysteries behind. So this one is fine. Like just open the first one, the first page, and that much is enough. Because like I have the paper with me here, anyways.
Title.
Yeah. I thought I would use that, but it's fine. Yeah, so we will be delving into historical context, methodologies, and applications. I'm going to be skipping over at least 2 to 3 of these because we need to go ahead. So, all right. So, cognitive neuroscience as a subject emerged in around 20th century, I suppose. And what it basically does is it studies the underlying cognitive processes such as perception, memory, language, and also decision making. And with that, the brain imaging part apparently it's an interdisciplinary field of intellectual field which mixes computer science and neuroscience. So we're looking at something that mixes computer science, neuroscience, psychology, and statistics. It's an interdisciplinary field, and I think it has a lot of potential. And there are some key milestones that happen throughout history, but I don't think we should go to history right now because that's going to take a lot of our time. So I'm just going to explain. Let's begin with computational brain imaging techniques, some of the techniques that we use for computational brain imaging. So, computational brain imaging involves the use of advanced computation methods to analyze and model data from various neuroimaging modalities. Right? So, these techniques play a very crucial role in understanding the complex relationship between the brain structure and function of the brains. So, some of the methods that we currently have is machine learning or pattern recognition. So, such as techniques such as vector mechanics, neural networks, and classification algorithms are employed to analyze patterns in brain imaging data. So, what it basically does is it classifies the brain in different stages, identifying regions of interest and predictive cognitive states based on imaging patterns. The next is function connectivity analysis. We're going to skip that. The third one is deep learning. Deep learning architectures. I think it was the last time as well. I talked about CNN and RNNs. CNNs are basically convolutional neural networks, and RNNs are recurrent neural networks. So these are constantly used for brain imaging tasks. So what brain imaging is, basically there are ways to image our brain, right? You can use magnetic waves, you can use electrical waves, and you have this image of brain. I think Rahul was also showing that picture of an elephant, right? Some person is holding a trunk, some person is holding this tail, and they all think this is different, right? So we have different ways of imaging the brain, and then using machine learning patterns, we can understand how the brain works and make assumptions about it, at least for now, for our technology that we currently possess. And there's also a resting state connectivity, RSFC, which is called, it's another way of imaging the brain. It helps us understand the default mode network, which is called DMN, which is very important for self-referential thinking and introspection. Also, before I go ahead with some of that stuff is left, I would like to apologize because I do not have a presentation, and that would have made it very easy for you guys to understand with what I'm talking about. But I'm really sorry about that. There's also two types of models which are called decoding and encoding models. So decoding models, they predict sort of those cognitive states, and the encoding models, on the other hand, what they do is that they reconstruct the activity patterns of the brain, which help us, with the machine learning algorithms that I previously mentioned. Yeah, just talking about the future of what it can provide us for as a civilization, this can give us is that we can predict neurological disorders such as Alzheimer's. We can treat Alzheimer's, we can treat Parkinson's disease and epilepsy if clinical diagnosis is used. And we can also treat psychiatric disorders such as schizophrenia, depression, and anxiety, because of the fact that we are able to target specific brains because of their own mapping. A person, for example, let's just say A has a brain, and we're able to map the person's brain out. We can give them personalized medicines for whatever the disease that they currently possess, right? There's also cognitive enhancement, which I've already talked to you guys about. This question that I posed, some people will be able to get cognitively enhanced, and what are the ethical laws behind it? What ethics do we need to follow about that? We've already talked about brain stimulation and all that. There's also neuroplasticity. Understanding neuroplasticity helps us design interventions and harness the brain's ability to adapt and reorganize. We'll also have aging and cognitive decline. So with the rise of understanding how the brain works, we can understand why is it that with aging, cognitive functions tend to decline, which is just somehow natural. And it's going to help us really understand. Okay. And it's going to help us really understand how the entire brain works and probably cure a lot of problems. We can enhance sport performances. In the future as well, we can have, if you guys have heard about the Human Connectome project, it's basically a lot of researchers are collecting and sharing their data all across the world in hopes that we're able to understand the neural networks of our brain much better than we currently do. We can also have real-time brain imaging. Neuroethics is something that we really need to look into. The problems with this entire thing is that the brain is very complex for us to understand, highly complex. And to understand the brain, there are significant challenges that we need to overcome, and that's going to be a very big problem. There's another problem that's going to happen, which is going to be data quality and reproducibility. The data that we get has to be extremely reliable because it has to do with someone's brain. Also, another problem is that this field is extremely interdisciplinary in nature, which I've already talked about. You need expertise from a lot of fields. So that's going to be another challenge that we need to overcome. Yes, obviously I've talked about the ethical use because there needs to be a lot of privacy involved with this. You can't release the data of a lot of people's brains without their own consent, which is very important. So that's going to lead to another hurdle that we need to sort of solve. Neural individuality is something, just because you took a sample of one person's brain does not mean it's going to apply to another person's brain as well. A lot of people have neural individuality, which is very important when you go into that realm of understanding how the brain works. And just like last few things I mentioned, just for ethical consideration, there's informed consent, that you need to take consent from the person whose brain you're going to use for research. There's privacy concerns, whether you're leaking the data or not. Neural enhancement has already talked to you guys about. There's dual use dilemmas and the data ownership. Let's just say you took the data of someone's brain. Do you own it, or does the person own it? That's a very big problem also that we need to come up with a solution of. And that's about it. I finished it as fast as I could. So thank you.
Thank you.
I wrote this, so I just ended it.
This is a part of what.
So I'll now hand over the mic to Professor Kamsa.
So anyway, we've had a long day and it's time for lunch. So I'll do some wrapping up. I was supposed to speak a little more at length on cognitive reserve, but I have a ready-made material on it. Those of you who are interested, please let me know. I have designed it as a weekend WhatsApp course. So January 3rd week, you can enroll in that course, and over 2 days I'll send you a WhatsApp message. Broadly, the idea of cognitive reserve is that doctors were a bit surprised when they saw the autopsies of some people who appeared to be perfectly normal, but the autopsy showed they had brain degeneration, cerebral areas and all. And they concluded that first they looked at their profile, etc., and they concluded that those who were highly educated, their work involved cognitive activities, they were able to keep their brain, although otherwise it would have been degenerating. So that is the basic idea. Now at Harvard and so on, people have done a lot of research, which shows that there are basically 5 or 6 things which you need to do to preserve your cognitive abilities for a longer time. One of them is food, plant-based vegetarian food. So when I spoke to somebody else who's in that field, he said that is actually not correct. This is their own fascination for vegetarianism. Because if you get the right minerals and everything, it is the same. But proponents, people have their own color, etc. So on. Then it talked about physical exercise. So normally we don't realize that physical exercise is very important for the brain. And that's why in school, you remember they have physical activity, etc. Also, the Japanese in the meeting, they do something physical before they start a meeting. We had normally thought physical is different, cognitive is different, but the two are related, and largely because of what was said earlier, the oxygen flow and the sugar flow and so on and so forth. Another very important thing which is very relevant for today's generation is the sleep. So today, in order to achieve goals, etc., productivity, we cut down on sleep. And we actually make a virtue out of it, that I can sleep only 4 hours, I sleep only 3 hours, and so on. But the sleep is where the rejuvenation happens and so on. Then the other interesting thing that has come out is being part of a social circle of friends, and this is very important. And Harvard did a longitudinal study of some 70, 80 years. When they followed through, they found the people who were happiest at the later ages of life were those who at 50s had a very good network of like-minded people with whom they could work, etc. And finally, of course, is keeping your brain active. Use it or lose it. And people tend to get onto more and more passive activities, watching television, reading newspaper, this, that, and staying with the same set of people. Whereas what is it? No, you must keep on stimulating your brain and have challenging things, etc. For those of you who are really interested in knowing more, can sort of send me a thing, I'll put you on WhatsApp, and I do these as weekend courses. Today, I'm creating a model of basically weekend courses to stimulate people and then give them lots of information then which they can process as per their need. What I really want to share with you is my upcoming thing. As I said, this woods kind of making are now over. We will have maybe special events if there is something which is interesting enough. But the next event I'm doing is on the 14th of April 2024, and this is World Quantum Day. Now, very few people are aware of this because it was only in 2022 that a bunch of scientists, etc., said that this will be done as World Quantum Day. And just like people celebrate Pi Day as 14th of March, because Planck's constant in something is 4.14 into so much, so they said this will be World Quantum Day. The first one was held in 2022 and 2023, so this will be the third World Quantum Day. I'm doing the event on that basically to get this, because although India has been talking about a national quantum mission and 6,000 crores have been done, it is being limited to the kind of fraternity I was part of, TIFR, IISc Bangalore, IIT Kanpur, IIT Roorkee, etc. But my belief is that the world is quantum in nature, shouldn't everybody know about it? And it is amazing. I'm just not able to understand. See, how many people, you may be in touch with children, how many schools still teach children that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west? Do they still do it? Yeah, so to me that is kind of absurd. अभी 14 जनवरी को हम लोग मकर संक्रांति सेलिब्रेट करेंगे कि सूर्य मकर राशि में चला गया. I just don't understand. एक तरफ हम चंद्रयान भी डाल रहे हैं, आदित्य भी डाल रहे हैं, और हम ये भी बनाएंगे. हाँ, मकर संक्रांति भी करेंगे और वो भी. So the point is that if the world is quantum, which it is, the earlier we get to people to understand that the world is quantum, the better it is. And there is absolutely no reason, if you can teach people Newton's laws of motion, you can also teach them uncertainty principle of Heisenberg. What is the big difference? Also, you are multiplying two things and saying the product is h cross. That is all that you are doing. De Broglie equation, all you are saying momentum and wavelength is h cross. So any children who can multiply two numbers, or in physics they begin with density is mass upon volume. It's the same equation that you're using for de Broglie and uncertainty principle and so on. So I want to trigger that, and therefore I'm doing that in a way which is structured as a one-day program. First, I begin with general welcome and Indian National Mission. Then 3 sessions. One I will be doing, the second quantum revolution overview. Then another colleague of ours from IGNOU, PV Suresh, will be talking about quantum artificial intelligence, because that's the first thing that will happen. And Ramesh Sharma will talk about quantum biology, which is where the future is. Actually, all this will eventually be explained once you start accepting the quantum aspect of it. The second session is going to be becoming quantum ready at different levels. So first is for university students, second thing is for school people, and the third thing is those who are studying in computer institutes. And the third session is for parents. So parents of children who are not yet going to school, because I personally am very serious that the entire education system is preparing people for a world which no longer will exist. So the second set is for people who will be between ages 6 to 14, which is covered in the RT. And the third is for parents of children who are in classes 9 to 12. Because they need not go after that, what is it, JEE, IIT, NEET, is that they're all over. And while they were concerned, but just like all science changed with new technology, everything changed with new electronics, everything is changed with AI, everything is like that. And in particular, we're talking brain today. In the UK, the National Health Service has said all the brain scanners now will be quantum sensors. Today it is MRI and EEG. These are the two techniques that we use for this thing. Will all be with quantum sensors. So I just want to say that those of you who are interested, please let me know. Participation is by invitation. There is no registration fee or whatever. But I want to filter it that only people who are really interested in taking it further come in. It will be at the Habitat Center. I already booked a room for Gulmohar, which is fixed seating. We'll have about 100 people or so which can be there. So I thought I'd extend that invitation and thank you for being part of this for so long. We will continue to meet on what is the management has been for ad hoc basis. So today we are invited to standard pattern. We'll say ad hoc. If some 8-10 people, like in a company, is that you call for an AGM. So if certain number of shareholders write, then an AGM has to be called. So if certain members say
EGM, that is not AGM.
AGM.
What you are telling is EGM. That's not
Okay, right. The annual is regular. So AGMs will not be held. Only EGMs will be held when some people say we want to meet and talk on this topic. So thank you for updating on that. So I think we'll break for lunch and sure after
one question which is bothering all of us, and particularly neuroscience people, how to manage the brain.